We also have threats to free markets in the form of taxes, regulation, subsidies, takings, the Kelo decision. Anybody get kind of steamed up about that one?
Yes.
We can take private property now because we figure out some other private property owner would be a better source of tax revenues. Here's my favorite though. Cash for clunkers. Now guys, I tried. I could not come up with an idea like this. Maybe I'd be a horrible politician, but I couldn't come up with this. Let me think about this. We're going to buy cars for more than they're worth, prevent their resale, and call that doing good for the economy. I'm sure there's somebody in the audience that understands this, and I'd like to ask you afterwards to take me back in the corner and explain it. You and I couldn't have come up with it, but now that they have, I actually have a better idea. It's called dollars for deadwood. Now I want you to stop for a minute, and I want you to think of the people you work with. You got the picture? Okay. Now, even libertarians would still argue that you cannot drown these people. So I'm going to suggest that the government buy them. Like that? I didn't say what to do with them. Oh, that's great. The problem with violations of economic rights is those bleed over into our political rights. Some ways are explicit, where we have things like the fairness doctrine. I'm not sure how we came up with that one or who was asleep at the wheel when we let it pass, but that is clearly an offense against free speech. We have campus speech codes, which again, when the campus is at least in part acting as the state, because they're state subsidized, one wonders how we had to come up with a place on campus where people can speak freely. Didn't get that one either. Okay. But we also have implicit violations. We have the threat of political retaliation for expressing an opinion. When more and more businesses and more individuals are beholden on the government for differential favors, we have more and more power of government to squelch any ideas that they might come up with that the government does not want to hear. We have subsidized political and environmental correctness. Pardon me if I offend anyone's sensibilities here, but let me tell you, there are some screwball ideas out there getting subsidized. Is that a surprise to anybody? I told you that I would tell you what time it is. And here's what I'm going to suggest. It's time for us to do a few things. I know we're all angry. I know we're all discontented. But that is not going to win us any support. Because when we're mad with each other, then we tend to become isolated. And I'm going to suggest a few things that will help us make our case better. Number one, I'm going to suggest that you take it upon yourself to read good material on free market thinking. Because free market thinking has become somewhat estranged from mainstream economic thought, it's sometimes I hear weak arguments for free markets. Why should there be free markets? Well, we usually say, well, that's unconstitutional. Well, there are a couple of things wrong with that. One, the Constitution, as great a document as it is, lacks some very specific protections against intrusions into economic liberty. Number two, appealing to the Constitution has its strengths, but in many ways it's like appealing to a fundamentalist religious doctrine. It's convincing only to those who already believe it. If you master free market arguments, you'll be able to convince people more effectively of the correctness of your position. For heaven's sake, folks, be civil. Shouting may make you feel better. It does not convince very many other people. It's sometimes hard to do that because these are anger-inspiring issues. Emphasize the benefits of free markets for the listener. If you don't convince someone why it is in their best interest to support free markets, your argument is likely to be wasted. Lastly, I'm going to suggest to you to develop what I call civic virtue. The people, okay, all right, I don't know who you are, but thanks. Civic virtue is our answer to what will happen to the poor and downtrodden. Free markets in themselves do a tremendous amount of good for those who truly can't help themselves. But for those that really need support, there is absolutely no reason that we cannot cultivate a culture of kind, benevolent, compassionate action. Not in the sense of being a servant of other people or of the state, as in socialism or fascism, but just the simple goodness of being a good human being to others. Thank you very much for having me.